What we avoid in business rarely stays at work. It follows us home. It wakes us up at 3 a.m. And for many business owners, finances become an invisible mental load that they carry every single day. Today we're talking about what happens when people finally face it and the extraordinary relief that comes with taking back control. I'm Hannan. I'm the CEO of SortMyBooks and the Professional Bookkeepers Academy. Welcome to our podcast, The Invisible Weight of Self-Employment. In this episode, we're going to share 4 stories of transformation. One of the stories that really stayed with me is about a charity manager. Let's call her Nuala. I've chosen this story because I know that many of you are likely board members of perhaps your local club or a cause that is dear to your heart. Now, I don't want to frighten you away from that responsibility. Our charities really need good board members that'll step up and get the job done. And while this is somewhat of a cautionary tale, I promise that I will give you guidance at the end on how to protect yourself and your organization. Like many people working in the nonprofit sector, Nuala genuinely cared about the organization and the people it supported. When she started in the role, very responsibly in my opinion, the first thing she wanted to do was understand the finances. She asked to see the numbers. She was handed a tangled web of spreadsheets that made absolutely no sense to her. Now, I love a good spreadsheet, but as all of you know, it's really hard to follow someone else's spreadsheets, isn't it? Now, this is far more common than people realize. Many charities have external auditors because that's a legal requirement. But very often, nobody is actually responsible for proper day-to-day bookkeeping. There's a strange, false sense of security that can develop around this. Board members think we're paying a large professional firm, so everything must be fine. And remember, as a board member, you're responsible for the organization. We get involved because we genuinely want to help. And I don't want to discourage that impetus at all, but I do want you to be aware of your responsibilities so that you're well informed enough to ask the right questions. Because auditors can only audit what they're given. And in this case, when we investigated further, we discovered the organization was paying around $25,000 a year to receive management accounts from a high-priced consultancy firm. When we asked how they were producing those reports, the answer was essentially, we can only work with the information we receive. They knew the underlying records were poor, they knew the spreadsheets were unreliable, but nobody was actually fixing the problem. And the real problem was simple. No one was doing proper bookkeeping. So Nuala did something very brave. Even though it technically wasn't her responsibility, and even though she received very little recognition for it, she tackled the issue head on. We helped her implement SortMyBooks, create proper financial systems, and bring clarity to the numbers for the first time. And this mattered enormously, because a few years later, when the pandemic hit, like many places, overnight the organization suddenly had to close its doors. There was no money coming in. But at least they weren't also trying to survive while being buried in financial confusion. They had visibility, they had control, they could make informed decisions quickly. There were financial supports available, but you needed to have your numbers up to date to make sure you weren't putting in false claims. We all know people that got caught for that. Nuala knew exactly how much money the organization needed to stay afloat during this challenging time. That organization survived because one person was willing to stick her neck out and confront the thing that everyone else was avoiding. Now, as promised, before you all rush off and resign from your charity boards, there are 3 red flags you can check to make sure your organization is on top of this. Number 1, are the numbers always late, confusing, or impossible to clearly explain? If management accounts arrive months behind schedule, they rely heavily on spreadsheets, or nobody can confidently explain where the figures come from, that's a warning sign. Confusion is not normal. Good financial systems should create clarity. Does the organization depend heavily on one person who knows how it all works? When financial processes live inside one person's head, the organization is very vulnerable. Strong organizations have systems, documentation, and transparency, not financial mysteries that only one person can decode. And number 3, is there a big spend on auditors or accountants, but very little focus on bookkeeping? Auditors are essential, they're a legal requirement, but they are not a substitute for poor bookkeeping. If nobody is responsible for accurate day-to-day financial records, then everyone further up the chain is working from unreliable information. Expensive reports can't fix poor underlying data. And I'm going to add a bonus one. Perhaps the biggest warning sign of all is this. Are people afraid to ask questions about the finances because they don't want to look foolish? Healthy organizations create cultures where people can ask questions early before small problems become a major crisis. If there's one thing I hope people take away from today, it's this. Most financial problems do not begin with incompetence. They begin with avoidance, with overwhelm, with people carrying responsibilities they were never properly supported to manage. And the tragedy is that the mental burden of not facing the problem is often far heavier than the problem itself. But the opposite is true too. The moment people begin to bring clarity to their numbers, ask questions, put systems in place, and face reality honestly, something remarkable happens. The stress begins to lift, confidence returns, decisions become clearer, and people stop carrying that invisible weight alone. Every story I've shared today started with somebody brave enough to say, "This isn't working and we need to deal with it." That courage changes organizations, it changes businesses, and very often it changes lives. Thank you for listening and for the work you do every day in your own organizations.